Have you ever found yourself repeating the exact same mistake, begging for a bailout, and wondering if you finally just pushed someone's patience way too far? I mean, today's sources show an ancient nation doing exactly that. So, welcome to the deep dive. I want to open today by extending a very warm welcome and offering a divine blessing for your day today and really for your entire upcoming week.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's a heavy, fascinating topic today.
It really is. Today we are digging into the 10th chapter of the book of Judges, and we're using notes from two distinct and highly respected study Bibles. That's the Holman Study Bible and the NAA, or the Nova Almeida Actualizada. And our mission here is to unpack this dizzying ancient cycle of leadership, total societal betrayal, and the complex, deeply emotional relationship between the Israelites and the divine.
Right. It's honestly a phenomenal text to explore because it just strips away a lot of the polished, idealized versions of history that we're so used to.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at raw human nature here. I mean, the chapter essentially documents a society slowly eroding its own foundation until it faces just a catastrophic collapse. And the mechanics of how that actually happens are surprisingly relevant for us.
Yeah, and to understand that collapse, we really have to start with the quiet period right before it. So our sources establish a period of relative calm under two leaders who are generally categorized as minor judges.
Right, and they're called minor not because they lacked importance, but just because the biblical record dedicates less space to them compared to heavy hitters like Gideon or Samson.
Exactly. So the first one is a man named Tola.
Yeah, Tola. He emerges from the tribe of Issachar, though he sets up his administration in the mountains of Ephraim. And he governs Israel for 23 years.
Which is a pretty solid run.
It is. And the context here is crucial. Before Tola, Israel suffered under the chaotic, tyrannical rule of a leader named Abimelech.
Right, which was essentially a civil war scenario, wasn't it?
Yeah, total chaos. So Tola's 23 years are really defined by restoring order. He basically rebuilds the baseline functioning of society.
He does the quiet, unglamorous work of stabilizing a broken nation, but then Tola dies, and the leadership transitions to a man named Jair.
Yes. Jair is a Gileadite, and he judges for 22 years.
And this is where the narrative really shifts gears. I mean, the text literally pauses the historical timeline to provide this highly specific, almost jarring inventory of Jair's personal assets.
The specifics are exactly what make it so telling. The text notes that Jair had 30 sons.
Okay.
Those 30 sons rode on 30 donkeys, and they controlled 30 towns in the region of Gilead, which were literally named after him. They were called Havoth Jair, meaning the villages of Jair.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because reading about a guy with 30 donkeys doesn't initially sound like a massive red flag to a modern listener.
No, not at all.
But riding 30 donkeys back then is the ancient equivalent of buying your kids a fleet of 30 luxury sports cars. I mean, it is an aggressive, highly visible flex of wealth. So why does the historical text pause to give us this specific real estate and transportation inventory?
Well, the Holman study notes provide a really brilliant lens for this. They refer to Jair as a, quote, little Gideon.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and to understand the mechanism of what's happening, you have to look at the 30 sons. Having 30 sons strongly implies having multiple wives.
Right, because in the ancient Near East, you didn't just marry for romance.
Exactly. You married to solidify political alliances and build a dynasty. So the multiple wives, the fleet of donkeys, the personalized towns, it all points to a leader who has stopped acting as a humble, spirit-led deliverer, and he started operating like a localized king.
So the system was originally designed to have these temporary specialized leaders raised up by God for specific crises. But Jair is like institutionalizing his own family's power.
Spot on. He is consolidating wealth and establishing an aristocracy. And this accumulation of wealth changes the whole psychology of the nation.
How so?
Well, when you have 30 towns and a fleet of donkeys, you have infrastructure, you have trade routes, you have comfort. And this comfortable complacency creates an illusion of self-sufficiency. They start to believe they don't need divine protection anymore because, well, they have economic stability.
Wow, that makes perfect sense of the psychology. Wealth breeds this false sense of independence. But the tragedy is that this very specific brand of comfortable complacency is exactly what directly triggers the massive societal collapse in the very next verse.
It really does. It's like they spent 22 years building this elaborate fortress out of their 30 towns and 30 donkeys, and then a slight breeze just levels the entire thing.
Yeah. Verse 6 details a complete abandonment of their spiritual foundation, and the geopolitical fallout is instant.
And they don't just, stumble into some casual mistakes here. The text provides a staggering inventory of their betrayal. They adopt the gods of the surrounding nations wholesale. It's a complete cultural and spiritual capitulation.
And the list is very specific, which tells us this wasn't just an accident. They worship the Baals and the Ashtoreths, which are the local Canaanite fertility and agriculture gods.
Right, which aligns perfectly with their new obsession with wealth.
Exactly. But then they add the gods of Aram or Syria, the gods of Sidon, the
Yeah.
gods of Moab, gods of Ammon, and the gods of the Philistines. So that adds up to exactly 7 distinct groups of false deities.
And the Holman notes highlight that the number 7 is not a literary accident. In ancient biblical literature, 7 consistently represents totality, completeness, or perfection.
Kind of like the 7 days of creation in
Yeah.
Genesis.
Yes, exactly that concept. Now, to really grasp the irony here, we have to look back at the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7, verse 1.
Okay, what happens there?
When Israel originally entered this land, God commanded them to drive out exactly 7 nations. The mechanism there was to prevent the Israelites from adopting the corrupt practices of those cultures and to preserve their unique identity.
Right.
But here, in just this tragic reversal, Israel is submitting to exactly 7 foreign pantheons. It's total spiritual apostasy.
Instead of pushing out the influence of 7 nations, they are importing the belief systems of 7 foreign powers. I mean, I've always heard this described as apostasy, but that term can feel a bit like religious jargon sometimes. What does that actually mean in this historical context?
Yeah, it helps to understand that their relationship with God wasn't just a private religion, It was a formal covenant. In the ancient world, a covenant functioned like a binding political treaty between a sovereign king and a vassal state.
Okay, so it's a legal framework.
Exactly. God provided protection and land, and Israel provided exclusive loyalty. So adopting these 7 pantheons isn't just attending a different religious service, it is apostasy, which in this context means literal political treason. They are breaking a legally binding treaty with their sovereign.
That reframes the entire conflict. It's a total breach of contract, and because it is a total breach, the consequences are total.
Yes. Consequently, God removes the protection clause of that treaty and sells them into the hands of 2 of those very nations.
The Philistines to the west and the Ammonites to the east.
Right. And it results in 18 crushing years of oppression. They are being squeezed from both sides. The sources note that the Ammonites, who operate primarily in the Transjordan area, actually cross the Jordan River.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they bring the military campaign directly into the Israelite heartland, attacking the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Ephraim.
But let's look at this practically for a second, because on the surface, this makes 0 sense. They are surrounded and oppressed by the Ammonites and the Philistines. Yet, according to that list of 7 deities we just read, the Israelites are actively worshiping the exact gods of the people crushing them.
I know, it sounds crazy.
Right. It's like enthusiastically wearing the jersey of the rival team that is currently beating you on the field. Why would a society do that?
Well, it exposes the brutal realpolitik of ancient theology. In the ancient Near East, military victory was directly tied to divine supremacy. Right, so if a nation defeated your army, the common conclusion was that their gods were objectively stronger than your gods. So the Israelites, having abandoned their covenant, are desperate. They are adopting the values and worshiping the gods of their oppressors, essentially trying to appease the deities of Ammon and Philistia just to buy some relief.
They are trying to negotiate a ceasefire by submitting to the spiritual authority of their attackers. It's a devastating cycle of abuse. And eventually, after 18 years of this intense pressure, the Israelites break. They finally cry out to the Lord, confessing, and they say, "We have sinned against you because we have abandoned our God and served the Baals."
Yeah.
Now, historically, this is the part of the cycle where a judge is sent and they are rescued. But the response they get here completely disrupts that expectation.
It really does. It is arguably one of the most surprising moments in the text. Because instead of a standard rescue operation, God replies by listing his own historical resume. He reminds them of every past intervention, specifically citing the previous oppressors he saved them from when they cried out.
And the math in this response is incredible. God says, when the Egyptians, the Amorites, the Ammonites, the Philistines, the Sidonians, the Amalekites, and the Maonites oppressed you, did I not save you?
Yeah.
That is exactly 7 past oppressors.
The symmetry is meant to be piercing there. Israel committed treason by choosing 7 sets of false gods. In response, God holds up a mirror, reminding them of 7 miraculous rescues he performed on their behalf.
Wow.
He establishes his absolute flawless track record of faithfulness in direct contrast to their complete unfaithfulness.
Which sets up what has to be one of the most chilling lines in the book. God says, "You have abandoned me and served other gods, therefore I will not save you anymore. Go and cry out to the gods you have chosen. Let them save you in the time of your distress."
The rejection is absolute.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, because this response almost sounds sarcastic or totally fed up. It completely shatters the always endlessly forgiving image we sometimes have. What does this mean for how the text views the consequences of our actions?
Well, God is forcing the Israelites to face the logical, real-world conclusion of their own choices. The Israelites made a calculated decision to invest their time, resources, and loyalty into the gods of Ammon and Aram. So God is essentially demanding that they apply that knowledge. He is demanding they test their own hypothesis. If knowledge is most valuable when applied, God is telling Israel to apply the protection of the false idols they invested in. By withdrawing his protection entirely, he allows the absolute worthlessness of their choices to manifest.
He's basically calling their bluff and exposing the infrastructure of their idolatry as completely hollow. And this harsh rejection forces Israel into a desperate corner. They realize the foreign gods offer zero actual protection. So they return to the Lord and they say, "Do to us whatever seems good to you, but please deliver us this time."
And crucially, they finally take physical action. The text says they actually put away the foreign gods from among them and served the Lord.
Okay, and that physical action brings us to verse 16, which introduces a massive scholarly debate that's highlighted in the NWA study notes. The text describes God's reaction to their misery, stating that his soul was grieved for the misery of Israel, or that he could no longer bear their misery. Tell me about this debate, because the NWA notes reveal that scholars are completely split on what God's reaction actually means here.
There is a deep, deep divide. The first perspective is what we can call the compassion view.
Okay.
This interpretation reads the original Hebrew phrasing as an expression of profound, infinite mercy. In this view, God is acting as the ultimate loving parent. His heart is breaking at the sight of Israel's deep sadness and genuine repentance. Even though they betrayed him, he simply cannot tolerate seeing his people in pain anymore, and he is deeply moved by their physical removal of the idols.
That view paints a picture of a relationship that, despite massive betrayal, still holds a core of deep affection.
It does, but the second view goes in a totally different direction. The alternative is the impatience view. Scholars who support this interpretation argue that the phrasing actually indicates God was deeply annoyed and impatient with Israel.
Wait, really? But if God is omniscient and knows everything...
Well, omniscience is a theological given here, sure, but the narrative is focusing on the relational dynamic playing out in real time. In the impatience view, God's annoyance stems from the fact that he sees their sudden religious cleanup for exactly what it is.
Which is?
A superficial, manipulative attempt to escape consequences. He is tired of the cycle. He looks at their superficial sadness and essentially views their repentance as just another manipulative attempt to get out of trouble. I cannot endure another round of these hollow apologies, basically.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because those are complete opposites. I mean, one is a loving parent melting with compassion, and the other is a parent crossing their arms, rolling their eyes at crocodile tears.
Exactly. It maintains an intense narrative tension. We're left wondering if Israel is actually experiencing a foundational change of character, or if they're just sorry they got caught in a geopolitical vice.
Which actually poses a really fascinating challenge for you listening right now. Think about the mechanics of an apology in your own life. When humans mess up and face a severe consequence, the instinct is to apologize. But when you apologize, are you seeking genuine transformation or just trying to manipulate your way out of a consequence? Are you removing the toxic elements just because you want the current suffering to stop? The text acts as a mirror for that exact psychological dilemma.
It really is a complex dilemma because human motivation is rarely pure, and the text refuses to resolve this ambiguity with a simple theological statement. We just have to watch how the situation actually unfolds on the ground.
And the situation on the ground is terrifying. Because regardless of whether God is feeling compassion or impatience, the immediate reality for Israel is stark. God remains silent and does not send a deliverer. There is a massive power vacuum.
The vacuum is absolute, and the timeline is accelerating. The sources detail that the Ammonites gather for war and set up their military camp in Gilead, ready to launch a full-scale assault.
The enemy is at the gates, heavily armed.
In response, the Israelites scramble and set up camp at Mizpah. You have two armies staring each other down. But the Israelites are missing the one thing they need most. They have no leader.
No one is in charge, and God hasn't appointed anyone.
And the Holman notes point out the ultimate tragedy of how Israel handles this. The entire system of the judges relies on waiting for a spirit-empowered liberator chosen by the Lord. But the Gileadites cannot handle the tension of the waiting. They panic, and they resort entirely to human politics.
They basically hold an emergency town hall meeting. The princes and the leaders of Gilead look at the impending Ammonite army, and they throw out this desperate offer. They say, whoever will launch the attack against the Ammonites will be the head over all the inhabitants of Gilead.
Consider the mechanism of that offer. They are leveraging a purely human reward, total political power, to absolutely anyone who's willing to take the first military swing. They abandon any requirement for divine calling or spiritual integrity.
So what does this all mean? They just went through this massive, dramatic process of supposedly repenting for acting like the pagan nations around them, but the absolute second they face a military crisis with no obvious divine answer, they resort to crowdsourcing a military dictator.
It proves that their reliance on human engineering is still their default setting. The pressure of the moment, combined with the silence of the divine, exposes their lack of endurance. They needed an immediate fix, and they were willing to hand over absolute authority to the first person who stepped up.
It is the ultimate panic move, trading principled leadership for a quick fix. And that brings us to a provocative final thought I want to leave you to mull over today. When you find yourself navigating a crisis and the answers or the relief aren't coming immediately, when you are met with silence, how do you handle that space? Do you have the patience and the internal fortitude to wait for a genuine, principled solution? Or does the anxiety take over? Do you panic and try to manufacture a quick, flawed, human fix, just like the leaders at Mizpah blindly offering the crown to anyone who would fight? Pay close attention to how you handle the silence in your own life.
The choices made during the silence always reveal the true foundation of a society or an individual.
That is exactly right. Well, that brings us to the end of our time today. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into Judges chapter 10. It's been an incredible journey through a complex and challenging text. Goodbye, and God blesses all the listeners.